Hi everyone, I hope you're all doing good. This is a video that I'm very excited about. I've actually had a lot of ideas recently in terms of packaging design and just some things that I wanted to try out for myself. So I decided to start a series called If Anta Design Was a Blank Brand. It's a way for me to experiment with packaging, my own brand, generally with design, and honestly just having a fun time to freely design with anything I want and with no real restrictions. I think this is a great way to purge some of my creative ideas that otherwise might be left untouched or unused. So the first project in this series is If Anta Design Was a Film Brand. As many of you might know, I love analog things. I love analog photography, I love analog watches. I use pen and paper all the time. So what better way to start this series than transforming Anta Design into a film brand? So that's what we're doing in this video. So let's get started. First, I flesh out the packaging properly before starting with the real design, because as we know, the form always follows the function. I actually had this dieline for a box of film from an old project where I redesigned Kodak for fun. You can actually find that video on this channel too if you're curious. And what am I if not efficient? So I'm just reusing the dielines from this, but I'm just reworking it a little bit to make it close better, and there are some custom elements that I want to add in, which you'll see later. So in Illustrator, I'm moving around some things in the dielines, and I wanted to print this very rough draft out in the early stages to see if it works when I start folding it and cutting and everything like that. And based on this, I just made some changes later on in the actual dielines because I just pointed out some things for myself that I wanted to change or where certain things needed to go. So it was great to have like this first rough draft that was very minimal to start with. So next up is the actual packaging design. I love bold and minimalism, so that's what we're going for in this art direction. I made a text version of my brand name and made sure to indeed add my official logo plenty as well. I also took some elements from the old design from the Kodak rebrand because they looked really nice and are actually super helpful elements to add onto the packaging. The Sunny 16 rule is a staple for every photographer, I think, especially when you use film. But I always forget what the actual rule is, like what the numbers are. So it's a really nice to have it on the box, I think, because that way you never forget. And this process was actually a lot of fun for me because I saw like what I can do with my current brand and change the design in a way that it can still align with my current brand but also being different for like this side of Anta Design being a film brand. And then, of course, we cannot forget to add some actual info about the product. So technical info such as the ISO, the number of exposures, how many rolls of film are in there, and of course, if it's like black and white or color. So I wrote all of these things on there. I decided to spice it up a bit and reuse some of my older designs that included an illustration too. Adding this really lifted the design to the next level, I felt, because I had the idea also that the illustration can vary depending on the type of film. So for example, like black and white or a different ISO. It's a really nice way to visually show also that it's different. After finalizing the design, I printed it out to test all of my ideas, see how it looked printed out, and if the perforation line that I had in mind would actually work. So let's get on to cutting, folding, gluing, and all of those fun things, and printing. I need to really like stretch my eyeballs for this. Where is it? So after experiencing this prototype in real life, I had some points of improvement. First off, the paper was too thin, which made it very hard to rip the paper in the perforation line because you'd end up ripping the whole packaging apart, and that's just not what we want. This is something that I already suspected, but it's nice to know that it's proven to indeed be correct. So I needed thick paper to make this work. Another thing was that for the die lines, the top and bottom sides actually need to be glued together because the perforation line should basically be the only way to open the package. So it doesn't really make sense to print anything on the spaces that won't be seen and that will be glued together. So I decided to remove those. And one thing that needed desperate changing though also was the glue line, because that sticks out when you rip the packaging open. And it doesn't look good, and it also makes it kind of difficult to open because the strip is glued to that part, if that makes any sense. So I had to make that glue part a bit smaller. So I have this line as a folding line. This one is shorter from here to here. So it's avoided when folding it over. And I think these are all gonna be attached to each other, glued. So this is the only thing that opens the packaging. So in the end, there will be no print on these ones, except for this one, which is the bottom and the top. Now I go and repeat the process from the beginning again, which is printing, folding, and gluing everything together. And this time I'm using my high quality, thicker Rustler paper. It's 220 grams A4 paper. I couldn't have the paper be too thick because then it gets really difficult and messy to fold. So this was about as thick as I could go. Of course, like actual produced packaging is like folded by machines, so they can use some thicker paper, but when I do it myself, it's really messy if I use too thick paper. So this is the best I could do. I will also speed up this process a bit because you've already seen it. It's the exact same as before. And it's honestly very therapeutic for me to work on these kind of projects where I get to do some kind of arts and craft things and actually like touch what I've created. It's quite relaxing and also a nice way to change what I'm working on, like my laptop, and then doing something where I'm actually using my hands. So now on to the final result. This is what it is. Just a bit of feedback for myself is that I would have liked to have the black and white one on a black background preferably, but I didn't want to put my printer through all that pain, so I didn't. But just for it to have been a bit more of a clear distinction between color and black and white, I really would have liked to do this. I do really like the addition of the illustration and the change of the illustration in each of the products of film. And I also like that each type of film would have a different message on the side, which I also have in these two concepts. And it's all related to like inspiration and art. I also thought the perforation strip worked a lot better on this thicker paper, but it's still not amazing because it's quite fragile. But I really couldn't use thicker paper because it would have become impossible to fold by hand. Choices. But this is the final result. I really enjoyed the process and I'm very proud of the outcome. It was a very satisfying process and I also learned a lot. I hope you enjoyed the process as much as I did, and I look forward to working on the next if and the design was a blank brand. I've got some great ideas planned for this, so I'm looking forward to share them with you once I create them. So see you soon and thank you for watching.